For 2 weeks now, protests have rocked Iran. As you might expect, there's been a lot of misinformation pushed by the government, the Islamic Republic. Sadly, some Western journalists and even human rights activists and academics have played a role in promoting that propaganda.
ایران خوانده شده و دستگیری اعضای شبکه‌ای که به ادعای این وزارتخانه عوامل موساد بودند.
Together, we're going to find out what's really happening in Iran as the protests spread across the country. First, why are these protests happening? You've probably already heard that these protests are about water, more specifically, the lack of it. You're right, at least that's where they started. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians are finding their taps, hoses and wells dry in the oil-rich province of Khuzestan. What's worse, this is happening in a summer where temperatures are surpassing 120 degrees Fahrenheit. But why isn't there water in Khuzestan? Since its inception, the Islamic Republic has instituted a senseless and destructive water management policy that has included the building of thousands of illegal wells, unscientific dam construction, and the siphoning off of water by corrupt politicians for their pet projects. This is especially evident in Iran's agricultural industry, which, while making up only 9% of the country's economic output, uses 90% of its water. But are the protests just about water? Many in the media have highlighted only the issue of water. But while these protests started with water, they quickly grew into much more. So, what do Iranians want? To find out the answer to that question, all you really have to do is listen to them. On the streets of Khuzestan, including in cities like Susangar, Izeh, and Masjid Soleiman, Iranians have had one clear target: the Islamic Republic. And they're equally clear in what they want: its overthrow. Their chants have included death to the Islamic Republic, death to the dictator. Many also chant Reza Shah, bless your soul, and O King of Iran, return to Iran. But how big are these protests? Just like the protests quickly moved beyond the issue of water, they've also quickly spread beyond the province of Khuzestan. Within days, protests spread to major Iranian cities like Isfahan, Tabriz, Karaj, and the country's capital, Tehran, where young protesters have come to the streets to chant, "Security forces, support us, support us." Neither Gaza nor Lebanon. My life is only for Iran. And clerics get lost. This obvious anti-regime sentiment is probably something you don't see in the mainstream media coverage of Iran or of these protests. When you do, however, particularly in Khuzestan, there's probably another bit of propaganda that you've heard: ethnic separatism. Khuzestan, like other Iranian provinces, is extremely diverse.
ما نه داعشی هستیم، ما ایرانی هستیم، خون و جگرمون ایرانیه، ایرانی هم میمونیم، بابا دارم میمیریم، والله بمیریم بهترمونه.
In addition to native Persian speakers, it is home to minority groups like Iranian Arabs and tribes like the Lors and Bakhtiaris. This has given fodder to the Islamic Republic, foreign actors, and uninformed commentators to claim that these protests are attempts at separatism or balkanizing Iran along ethnic lines. This too is false. Protesters have made clear that just because they chant in their native tongue doesn't mean they want separatism. They want freedom. Here too, the chants of the people on the streets are instructive.
قابل توجه تمام کسانی که در این سالها کشتند، خیانت کردند، اختلاس کردند و یک مشت جوان بیکار و معتاد و فقیر و اعصاب خورد روی دست ملت گذاشتند.
After the first baseless accusations of separatism were made, Iranians gathered in streets across Khuzestan to chant Bakhtiaris and Arabs, unity, unity. On the streets of the northern province of Azerbaijan, they chanted, Azerbaijan is awake, standing with Khuzestan. And in Tehran, from Tehran to Khuzestan, unity, unity. Their message is clear. Now, how has the Islamic Republic reacted to all of this?
نیستم، من حریف شما نیستم، به خدا بیکارم 22 سالمه حق منو میخوام، تیر نزن.
The regime, true to form, has reacted violently. Security officers, both uniformed and plainclothed, have been firing live ammunition at protesters, aiming for their heads. Multiple children have already been killed. It has also cut off the internet in Khuzestan and taken steps to limit mobile phone access to prevent Iranians from communicating with one another and organizing their protests and from sharing images with the outside world. Despite this, Iranian protesters risking their lives for freedom have received only minimal support and solidarity from the outside world. President Biden has been entirely silent. Meanwhile, the regime's apologists and propagandists abroad have begun to attack and undermine the protesters and, using their relationships in the media, push the Islamic Republic's narrative. This may not have been the story you got from the media, but it's the story the Iranian people are literally dying to get you to listen to. This is the 5th nationwide uprising Iranians have had in the past 4 years alone. Most often, they've suffered and been brutally suppressed in silence, including a mainstream media blackout. Don't let them suffer and die in silence. You can be their voice.